Hello and welcome to the Parkinson'S Foundation Wellness Wednesday program, What's Your PD Story? Share It. I'm Sarah Osborne, a Community Program Manager with the Parkinson'S Foundation. Thank you for joining us today. So before we get started, a few housekeeping items from the Foundation. If you aren't already, I'd like to invite you to join us on camera today and to connect and see your Parkinson'S community. So if you go ahead and click on the camera icon, that'll start your video. And then if you select gallery view in the top right corner of your viewing page, you can scroll through and see everyone who's sharing this time with us today. So I'm joining from Los Angeles, California, and I would love to know where you're tuning in from. So go ahead and feel free to share and chat where you are, where you're calling in from. And again, welcome to the Parkinson'S Foundation Wellness Wednesday. So before I introduce today's speakers, we would like to ask another question of our audience as we get started here. And also don't feel that you need to answer immediately. This is something maybe that you want to think about throughout the program. So the question is, boxers and superheroes have stage names that express an aspect or a side of themselves. What would yours be? So you'll see in the chat there some examples, Power Punch Patty, Calamity Jane, Mr. Infamous, the Viper. So go ahead and, if you're comfortable, share your superhero name. So this doesn't have to be Parkinson's related, but it also could be. I am a working mother of 3, so I think my stage name right now would be the Juggler. Great, we have some good names coming in here. The Parkinator. I love it. All right. So now we'll get started. I am delighted to introduce our first presenter, Kristy Pomes. Kristy is the Parkinson'S Foundation Associate Director of Content Strategy. Kristy oversees the content for the Foundation, including messaging, and writes Foundation's emails, blogs, website articles, and print publications. Like the Parkinson Report newsletter, which some of you may have received recently, she enjoys well-written television. Absolutely. And she lives in Miami, Florida with her husband and tailless cat Thunder. It's an awesome name for a cat. So with that, I am going to end my screen here and let Kristy take over.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Parkinson'S Foundation presentation today of What's Your Story? Share It. My name is Kristy Pomes, and I am the Content Strategy Associate Director here at the Foundation, and I will be talking you through my PD stories. So what is a MyPD story? A MyPD story is an inspirational story submitted by anyone in the Parkinson's community that explains any part of Parkinson's disease. From that mixed feeling of relief and uncertainty when getting a diagnosis, to the first time throwing that first punch in an exercise class. We really want our community to make these stories their own and talk about any facet of Parkinson's disease that they have found to be helpful in their journey. Who can submit one? Like I said, anyone can submit a MyPD story, from a person living with the disease to a care partner. We've had doctors submit them, nurses, people who lead Parkinson's boxing classes. Really anyone in our community is welcome to share their story. Why are they important? So these stories are important because they give Parkinson's a face. Oftentimes people say, I'm more than this disease. And we tell that story through MyPD stories. They help promote Parkinson's awareness. This is a really important one. In all the work we do at the Foundation, we really try to show that Parkinson's disease is a problem for 1 million Americans. So these stories help us promote the awareness and the reach that this disease has for our community and then beyond our community as well. They help stimulate your brain. So neurologically, writing helps exercise the brain. It taps into long-term memory. Creativity helps spice up repetitive tasks. And writing can also be cathartic, a great way to heal what you've been dealing with in terms of this disease. Last, they're also a great way to honor or in memory of a loved one. So to the right here, we have the story of Daniel Sorenson, who is a Kansas City Chief player, and his father was diagnosed with Parkinson's. His father used to be really involved with all of his children. He would call Daniel at practice to talk about how his practice went and his game was going. And once his father was diagnosed, it was a very quick progression. And his mother actually called our helpline to talk about what resources she can find. So from then, the entire family has really been thankful to the foundation and has really worked with us together. So Daniel has submitted a story, which we featured on our website and in our newsletter. So the other reason to do it is for the Parkinson's community. These stories actually build a community support system so that others can relate to your story, feel inspired by your story. It's a really great way to communicate with others in our community and to people outside of our community as well. So if you're not ready to submit a story yet, you can always take the exercise to write it down. Maybe there's a part of the disease that you want to write about. Maybe there's a treatment that you really like. Maybe there's an exercise class that has inspired you. Want to hear about it. So my PD stories are actually very popular in terms of content and social media. We share all of these stories on our website, which is Parkinson.com/mypdstory. So far this year, we've posted 24 of them, and they've amounted to almost 80,000 views of our website. So there's a lot of people who go on to see these. We've had 19,800 people open our last email that featured a MyPD story. So they get great readership, great reach. We've also had 2,600 people view Richard as a MyPD story. And Richard is a really dedicated volunteer to the foundation. So we are always happy to share stories like Richard's. And Alicia, here to the right, was actually the most liked story on our social media page, because we also post these on Facebook and Instagram as well. Stories that show impact. Some stories highlight how the Parkinson's Foundation has made life better through volunteering experiences, exercising through a community grant recipient class. Other neurologists at a center of excellence really helped them, and how research has informed them. Some of the people who submit these take place in research initiatives and clinical programs, and Moving Day, which is our signature walk program. A lot of people like to write about this program too. To the right, you can see the story of Heather. Heather's actually a mom of 3 and a teacher, and she just thought she had really bad fatigue that she couldn't shake. So after seeing several doctors, she was told that she actually applied her makeup too precisely to have Parkinson's. So she continued on because she knew something was going on. She was diagnosed with a nervous breakdown, a virus, chronic fatigue syndrome, all before she heard the words young onset Parkinson's. So at 44, she was actually diagnosed, and she took it upon herself to really start reaching out and finding ways that she can help spread her story and connect with other women who might have young onset Parkinson's. So through that, she actually found us through our Women in PD initiative, became really interested, and shared her own story. And because of that, she got picked up through Women's Health and other venues to really show the world that young onset Parkinson's disease is a big problem. So next, we're going to share a story from Lou Eisenberg, and she's actually a PD advocate who is a member of our People with Parkinson's Council. So she's doing a great job to help us advocate for veterans with Parkinson's disease.
I generally open my presentation with these words. I have Parkinson's due to exposure to Agent Orange. By sharing the facts, I hope the attendees will not be uncomfortable if I make strange moves or have dyskinesias. It is also my way of demonstrating that one can live a full life in spite of Parkinson's. As a new member of the People with Parkinson's Council, my intentions are to prove just that. Please stay well.
So you can actually view Lou's entire story at parkinson.org/mypdstory. So how do you submit your story? Well, you can either write it or record it. And if you don't know where to begin, we're happy to provide these 4 questions that you can answer. So summarize your diagnosis. What were your first symptoms? What was your story to receive a diagnosis? Was it a quick process? Did it take a really long time? Did it take several doctors? And how did it finally feel to have an answer? A lot of the times the answer to that is relief, but sometimes people write about the shock and how they got over the shock. And things like that. So number 2, what helped you most with Parkinson's? That could be your care team, an exercise class, volunteering, the support you received from your family. All these things are really great ways for people to resonate with your own story. Number 3, what advice would you give to someone newly diagnosed? This is a big one. A lot of people like to write about what they had wished they'd known. Again, makes a great MyPD story. And any other part of the PD experience that you want to share. So we ask that you submit your story with 2 photos right here at parkinson.org/mypdstory. Another option, like Lou, is to submit a video. So for that, you can answer those same talking points and more, anything you want to talk about. Record your story on your device. Some quick recording tips are to make sure you film horizontally if you're using a tablet or a phone. Ask someone to record you, or record yourself by propping up your device against another surface, and really aim for 5 minutes or less. Tell your story in 5 minutes or less. And again, this story can also be submitted at parkinson.org/mypdstory. So these stories really do inspire. To the right, you can see the last one that we posted on our Facebook, and we get a lot of reactions. So again, we post them on parkinson.org/mypdstory. We email them a lot of the times to our entire constituency, and we share them on social media across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, as you saw where we put Lou's up. And we also have, in some cases, media outreach. Sometimes the media connects with us, asking us to identify people with Parkinson's in their area, and generally we'll reach out to people who've submitted stories who are more than happy to help us spread Parkinson's awareness. So how can you share your story? So once your story goes live, you can share your link with family and friends. You can share it on your own social media platform. You can share it with your support group, exercise group, and encourage them to submit one too. And if you have a blog, it's a great place that you can post too. So key takeaways from today's presentation is that MyPD stories really do inspire other people. They help spread Parkinson's awareness. You can submit your own story via a narrative or a video at parkinson.org/mypdstory. And please share your story. We're very happy to have them, receive them, and share them with our community. Thank you so much for attending this Wellness Wednesday. I hope everyone has a great day.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kristy, for all of that great information. A reminder, as we are moving on here, please do, if you're comfortable, let us see you on camera. We love to see the faces of our community and to see each other as well. So in the top right-hand corner, you can also go into gallery and scroll through. Also, please continue to chat and tell us your superhero name or your boxer name if you're comfortable. It could be Parkinson's related. It doesn't have to be. We had some examples before, and if you missed it, I had said my name would be the juggler. Throughout this pandemic, that would be my superhero name. So please, feel free to keep that going. All right, so now I'd like to introduce our second speaker, Robert Cochrane. Robert is an award-winning filmmaker joining us today. His works include the Boys of Summer documentary series, which feature his father, Dan, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2001. So he's currently working on his PhD in kinesiology at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where he's focusing on the effect of improvisation on Parkinson's disease. And he's also a proud husband and father of 2 kids. So welcome, Robert.
Hey, thank you very much. You know, I'm going to get to the slides in just a minute, but I wanted to do something because improv's a thing. Let's introduce it right away. So make sure you're in gallery view if you could do that so we can see everybody. We're going to do a quick improv game just to get our blood flowing a little bit and have some fun. Here's the first 2 commands I'm going to give you. You don't need your mics on, so get those off. When I say move, I want you to move. And that just means move any way you want throughout your frame, anything you want to do. That's any kind of move is okay. When I say stop, you stop. Those are the first 2 things we're going to do. Okay, ready? Move. Stop. Move. Stop. Okay, good. Drop that. That's good. Next 2 commands are going to be left, and that's your left hand. And by the way, you may be mirrored, so it looks like you're right, but go ahead, just put up what is your left hand. And when I say right, put up your right hand. Okay? So left and right. Move. Stop. Right. Move. Left. Okay, good. Last 2 are going to be name and color. When I say name, you're going to say your first name. Don't worry that we can't hear you. We're going to trust that you're saying that. And the other thing, when I say color, you're going to say your favorite color. All right? Name, Robert. Color, green. All right? Here we go. And move. Right. Color, green. Name, Robert. Move. Stop. Great. Here's the trick. Now, when I say move, you're going to stop. When I say stop, you're going to move. Everything else stays the same. Okay, here we go. Stop. Right. Left. Name. Robert. Stop. Move. Good. Now, when I say left, you're going to put up your right hand. When I say right, you're going to put up your left hand. Here we go. Stop. Left. Name, Robert. Color, green. Move. Good. Oh, stop. And drop it. Okay, good. We don't have to get the last one. That's just a little fun. It's a warm up, but it also plays a little bit into improvisation about sometimes in life, signals get mixed up. And we know that happens in Parkinson's too, that we're thinking one thing and then something else happens and we have to adjust, we have to adapt. So those are important things, and it's a good way to get to what improv is about. And there's going to be 2 key words I'm going to give to you in just a moment, and those are yes and. So kind of lock those away in your mind as we think about that. Yes and are 2 of the key words of improvisation. Here is, all right, there's the screen, and let's get the presenter mode right down there. Okay, good deal. So improving Parkinson's from day 1. That's what we want to do. Day 1 is going to be what we talked about. I thought it was interesting in Kristy's talk. She talked about, a lot of you said the story you would tell would be the diagnosis story. And that's what day 1 has to do with. So we're going to keep that in mind too. The overview of where we are and what we're going to do today. My dad and our journey together, that was mentioned in the opening. Improvisation, you got a little taste of that. And then day 1 PD Superheroes, which is a program that was funded by the Parkinson Foundation. And I'm very happy for that this is our first year of trying that out. And we'll talk about where we're at as a pilot program. The importance of all of this to me is that we work together as a community. As it says right there in the bottom of the screen, better lives together. I agree with that wholeheartedly. This is how we can lift each other up so that we can pull ourselves out of isolation, that none of us, from the folks with Parkinson's, the care partners, the wellness and the medical providers, we should all be together. And that's the idea. We work together so we're better together. All right, here's my PD hero. There's Dad, okay? This was back in the 1990s, and his plan was to bring us closer together. I was in college at the time, and he knew that I loved baseball. And he said, well, how about we go on a baseball road trip together, the ultimate baseball road trip together. And in fact, that was to go see all 30 major league parks together. The idea was we'd see him a few at a time. We didn't, because of my school schedule and his work schedule, have the ability to really head out all at once. But the first year in 1990, we saw 4 parks in Detroit, 2 in Chicago, and 1 in Milwaukee. And then in 91, we saw 3 more out in Boston and Detroit and New York, the Yankees that year, old Yankee Stadium. So then life got busy after that, as it does. I graduated. Dad went ahead and he moved on to retire at 50. God bless him. He was successful and healthy, and golf was going to be his next step. That's really what he wanted to do. So we would get back to the baseball trip. We swore in time. I went ahead and I became a filmmaker. I went to grad school at UCLA, and my dad said a couple words that were really, really beautiful to me. He said, follow your dreams. And he really has always supported that from the beginning. I didn't have a particular background toward filmmaking, but it just through a couple of classes and life circumstances said, this is where I think I want to be, and became self-made in the filmmaking world down there in Los Angeles. So that was going fairly well, the life down there and the idea of what being a filmmaker was. But in 2001, in the summer, in a 2-week span, we suddenly got some really difficult changes. Mom was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And a week later, Dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's. They went from being these kind of superhero figures to me who really never had major health problems to suddenly very vulnerable people who were facing very major challenges. My dad's diagnosis may sound familiar to some of you who maybe had if you did have a less than caring physician, and I hope you didn't, but I've heard enough of these stories to know they're out there. He was told that he'd be in a wheelchair in 6 months to 30 years. And that really dire kind of blank diagnosis left my dad in a very awful feeling about what it was. That was part of his day one experience. But we knew that that Mom's breast cancer was more pressing because, again, she was stage 4. So we flash forward here, and we're going to take a look at those 2 words, yes and what they have to do with Parkinson's. Yes, for our purposes, is the acceptance that Parkinson's is part of my life, all right? And that's difficult. There's a lot of time people spend in either denying it or hiding it or trying to run from it. However, if we don't get to that place of just getting to the acknowledgement that it's there, we can't get to the second part, which is your power phase, and that's and. Here's what I'm going to do with it. This is where you take control of your power and you put your influence onto what Parkinson's is going to be in your life. So our yes and, this is how Dad and I handled it. Well, 2004, thankfully, a few years later, Mom is in remission. She's a survivor. That's awesome. So Boys of Summer begins. That's the first documentary film. You can see the poster over there to the right. There's Dad and I playing catch, a motif and a symbol, metaphor for what we were doing throughout, passing stories and life back and forth to each other, because we got on the road for 2 months, drove 20,000 miles and saw a game at each of the 30 Major League ballparks together. We camped, we met people with and affected by PD, obviously saw lots of baseball, we saw lots of different stages of Parkinson's, and the rally cry at the time really was a cure within 10 years. So my dad, who was early onset and showing very few symptoms at the time, felt very hopeful about where he was going and what was happening in his life with Parkinson's. But I think you all know how this goes, because 10 years later, 2014, well, there is no cure. And, you know, since we bought very heavily into that idea, that was a severe disappointment for us, because now it's like, well, wait a minute, what are we supposed to do? And it wasn't because of bad intention. It wasn't because of bad effort. This is just science. It's not perfect, but it doesn't mean that people aren't trying, that they shouldn't keep trying, of course. And we support and fund and do everything we can to continue those efforts. However, in the meantime, there's stuff we can do. And unfortunately for my dad, what he heard from his Western medicine doctors was, here's some pain pills. Well, we knew that was a really bad path, because he had reached the threshold of where he was going to be with his Parkinson's medication. And at that point, if he was to go down that path, that was giving in a way that he just really wasn't ready to do. So the significant decline in quality of life, he had a 55-degree tilt in his back with scoliosis, and there was a big weight gain, and just, you know, he was beginning to question, what am I here to do? And that was scary to me. As you'll see here in this Boys of Summer second base poster, there's a third figure. That third figure is my son, Giuseppe, and that's part of what drove my dad forward, was the idea of stepping into a new role as a grandfather. He could see there was something more to fight for. And that's constantly the thing, to look for the next thing. What can I embrace? What can I look forward to? What do I have to add my life to expand it beyond just myself? So we began to look into some alternative medicine. And what did that mean? Well, there was a chiropractor in Las Vegas we worked with who did acupressure, ionic foot baths, red light therapy, and a ketogenic diet, amongst other things. Saw my dad 5 days a week over the course of a couple months, and that's where we made the second film. And, you know, I can't point scientifically to where exactly the good things happened with my dad. What I can say is there was a noticeable shift in his behavior, and that basically he lost 35 pounds, and he began to look at his life as possible again. He began to engage again. I had noticed gaps in my dad saying yes to things, that some of his confidence was lacking. So I was really worried about that. I told him, showed him, of course, The Next Generation, and he got to spend time with his grandkids because they don't live in Las Vegas. But getting to see that reignited that part of himself. So we were looking for hope and looking for something to attach to. One of the things that I decided to share with my dad at that point, something that felt right, was formally introduce him to improvisation. Now, my background, I knew about improvisation from being a performer back in the 1990s, almost working LA through. I knew about it from that sense, but philosophically, spiritually, a guy who I worked with, this is Rob Belushi, he taught us a few things, and we sat down with him while we were filming Second Base, and here's the interview we did with him, as well as some of my dad's reactions.
Like I'm very nervous to be a father because I feel like part of me would be a great dad and then part of me would be a criminal.
Rob Belushi is a friend, a mentor, and yes, he's the son of James Belushi. He's a professional actor specializing in and teaching improvisation, which I thought might offer some interesting insight to my dad.
And that's kind of the philosophical approach of improv, is like, things are going to happen, and the thing that I control is my reaction, right? I think when people are struggling with health, mental health, addiction, the main like instinct is to isolate and like remove yourself. Either it's a form of denial, of shame, you know, of being overwhelmed, hopelessness, despair. All these things make you want to kind of remove yourself, and you know, an improvisational approach would be like to wear these types of things with a badge of courage and fully engage more, so that the scene of your life, you know, is being shared by more people than just you.
When you're discussing improv and saying, I think of it as a more formalized. I mean, and it should be anything but formalized. What we're doing right here now, when you said that, or he said that, or both of you said that, we're doing right here now is improv. I never thought of it that way.
That's what we're doing, right?
Yeah, what we're doing right now.
Scene. There we go. So that idea that what improvisation is and how it can be used was a real game changer for us at that moment, because my dad thought about it and began to see, okay, that's what yes and can mean to me. Maybe saying yes to things lends to new opportunities, lends to new points of view, lends to new journeys and excitement. The world opens up with yes and adding yourself to it. Not just yes and being a bystander, it's yes and being active along with it. So from a philosophy to a survival technique to later, we're going to talk about it as an exercise. So there we go, gear forward. So what is improvisation? Just a quick background on it. Viola Spolin is considered the godmother of improvisation in the United States. And in the 1930s, she worked with a government works program that helped immigrant children who couldn't speak the language assimilate to the United States by offering these games and helping them work together and feel more comfortable in their neighborhood and in culture. And she said, improvisation is a process applicable to any field, discipline, or subject matter, which creates a place where full participation, communication, and transformation can take place. That's so important, I think, is that, you know, the participation, you're there, communication, you're using your voice, which we know is so important in Parkinson's, and then transformation, you're allowing what was to be shed and you to become something new, maybe something you never even dreamed of before. Sarah's been talking about the superheroes that we don and the characters, that whether they're masks or capes or nicknames, whatever it is, we can transform, and we can do so instantly by saying yes and. So improvisation is an exercise, as you saw in that opening game. You know, there's physical activity, there's mental activity, there is a lot behind it going on. So it's what we want to do with it. Now, what took it from an interesting idea to, hey, wait a minute, there could be something academic to it, was Northwestern University published a paper with the help of the Parkinson's Foundation and working with Second City there in Chicago. And they said in 2016, the effect of improvisation on Parkinson's, that there was some positive influence. The good news, and you know, if you participated in the study, 100% completed the study. That's saying something. So people enjoyed it, and everybody said they'd recommend it to others with PD. It was highly rated in measures of satisfaction and perceived benefit. So the way people felt about it was good, and many appreciated that others in class found them to be funny. It is an amazing feeling to have people laugh at a joke that you told, or to say that, you know, a quick one-liner or something you did, a character, a voice, something felt good. These are amazing values that can lend to self-efficacy, to the shedding of stigma, to bringing up your worth. So all of that really matters, and it's part of the improv. Now, why it matters for PD? Well, if you're focused on a cure and that's all you're focused on, there's really no choice. You're sitting, you're not active anymore, you're waiting. And again, I'm not saying anything against those who are trying to do it, but it doesn't leave you the place to do something about it, okay? So by saying yes to quality of life as your focus, you have many choices. That's where your and is, okay? So it's accepting that there is currently no cure, and that's not bad news, that's just the news. And quality of life will give you your power, okay? That's your and, that's where you step into it, what you can do to improve your quality of life. We know there's many common challenges with Parkinson's: anxiety, stigma, depression, falls. And the big one for me that kind of wraps around all of them is isolation. And that runs right back to the bottom of the slide again. Better lives together. We need to get out of isolation. And that comes from really having programs that are fun, things we want to do. The best exercise is the one you'll do. It's the one you like, okay? The one you like is the one you'll do. Some of improv's fun and how it applies. We do this thing called Today's the Day. It's a call to action. This says right now, in this moment, I'm here with you, and this is all that matters. Today's the day I am a prince. Yes, look at me, I'm royal, I'm in front of you, and I bequeath all of you 10 gold coins. Go all about your way. Yes, I'm a kind prince. Today's the day. Whatever it is, you become that in the moment, and you really become that because you say so. It's affirming the moment and affirming you in the moment. This is a fun phrase we say, auga, and you can say that at home, even if your mic's on. Go ahead and try it out. Auga. Auga is a phrase we say when we make mistakes, because mistakes are in fact fun in improv. Mistakes are the things that lead to the funny. They are the things that make us go, yes, and. The minute we make a mistake, we go, that was awesome. We do more of it, and we build on it, and it becomes incredible. The thing that we were one moment felt shameful for becomes the bedrock and the pillar of the thing that made everyone laugh and feel great. So this gives us grace, and it helps us embrace fear, failure, and fun, okay? And then finally, I declare. Stepping into power. I declare I'm going to have a delicious root beer soda at the end of this program. That's just letting you know, root beer is on my mind and I'm going to have that. I declare. It plays along with Today's the Day. Your declaration is your voice, and this is you saying that. Now, yes and plays with all of that. That basically someone declares, the next person yes ands it. I declare I'm going to have a root beer soda. Yes, and I'm going to put some ice cream in that, and it'll be a float. Well, isn't that beautiful? It just got built onto the next thing. All right, so here's the thing. Let's jump into let's jump into gallery mode. I'm going to stop the share for just a moment. And good, everyone's in gallery mode already. What I'd like you to do is, hopefully you can all see me. If for whatever reason you can't see me, pick someone else on your screen and focus on that one person. But if you can't see me, focus on me. In the game of mirror, I want you to follow what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to move nice and slow, and you just move along with me. All right, that's what we're doing. Here it goes, nice and slow. Good. Keep going. And now what I want you to do is pick someone else. I don't care who. Anytime I say switch, Pick someone else and start following that other person. I'm going to start following someone else. Switch. And switch. And switch. And seeing, good, drop it. Okay, fun. So within all of that, there's a connection. There's something where we are physically, without saying the words, we're saying yes and to each other. And we're really validating each other. You don't know if you're following or leading. It's sort of like the didgeridoo, for those who know that circular breathing, weird little instrument that they have down there in New Zealand, Australia, where you're both following and leading at once. This is the teamwork where we're absolutely in sync with each other and we're just supporting each other all at the same time. So there's real power and intimacy in that. There's a lot of ways to play mirror. So thank you for doing that. All right, I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint. All right. Great. So laughter, which is a natural offshoot of improvisation, it matters. Yeah, it actually does. There's physiological positive effect to it. Laughter has been described as the best medicine. You've heard that before. We know it boosts the immune system, releases endorphins, it stimulates circulation, improves respiration. I mean, all that going for it. Here's a great quote too from one of my favorite articles where the researcher said, depression is the main negative factor. Ooh, I'm pulling ears out of myself. Depression is the main negative factor that impacts quality of life in Parkinson's disease and may precede motor symptoms for years. So we need to, along with isolation, make sure and be very cognizant of the realistic nature of depression and what can we do to fight against that. Laughter is a wonderful, wonderful antecedent to depression. And especially, again, when we're doing it in groups. You laugh by yourself, that's fine. You're watching your shows. And those who maybe are familiar with Norman Cousins' work, you know, the anatomy of an illness, wonderful stuff. Bring it together and it just grows infinitely because we learn to laugh together, all right? All right, so the Improv to Improve program, I2IPD, as I'm calling it, is something that started up in 2019. I began to test that theory to say, is this more than just a thought? Can this get out there into the community at large? I'm with a company called Comedy Sports, and Comedy Sports has groups, teams in 30 cities across the US and one in the UK. So I went to these 5 cities and tried it out with the local Parkinson's communities. And they all responded extremely well to it. They said, yes, this is something we'd like to see more. We do see the effect in single workshops. But then, of course, in 2020, we had the COVID impact and all of these live events that we had planned, including work with the Parkinson's Foundation and Comedy Sports teaming up to bring this to communities, got put to a halt. So the question became, could we improv online? Well, we wouldn't be very good improvisers if we didn't find out a way to say yes and adapt. And we have done that. And you're seeing a screenshot from, just like we're in a Zoom meeting now, improvisation online. It's a strange, different, weird new world, but hey, that fits exactly where we are. And yes, the good news is we can improvise online. Now this leads into what the Parkinson's Foundation said yes to. And I got to Anne very nicely, which is the Day One PD Superheroes program. It incorporates improvisation and the storytelling aspect that we've been talking about so much today. There's a gap in treatment that we know of in Parkinson's for sure from day one. I've interviewed hundreds of people with Parkinson's, and I hear repeatedly that their day one experience, and as was backed up today in that poll, that's the story people want to tell, is a scary one. It's devastating. It leaves people wondering what's next. And often, all too often, unfortunately, they're left wanting from their doctors. They want information. They're traumatic. They're shocked. And they don't feel supported by what's next, as it were. It's the whole reason Parkinson Foundation is who they are and what they do to provide some of that. So Day One PD Superheroes is a way to help people get to the yes, because that's the first step, of course, the acceptance of having Parkinson's, so there's something we can do about it. The and comes in the form of the power of a positive narrative. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's the story I'm going to tell about my Parkinson's and about my life and the way I'm addressing it, so that I can live this heroic, super heroic journey. Some of you may be familiar with Joseph Campbell's work. The Hero's Journey is a template to guide the students or participants in this class that I have. And there's 19 participants. We're in a pilot program, started about 3 weeks ago. And people are finding that it is something they can do to get to know people from all over the world. We have people from as far as Scotland and parts of the UK to the Northwest, to Maryland, and certainly in the Southwest. They're finding the similarities in their story and the strength and the power in how they can lift each other up because of that. They're getting out of isolation. They're playing together improvisationally. They're realizing the power of their voice, and they're using narrative therapy. Now, narrative therapy in theory is an idea that helps you see yourself as separate from your experiences. Kind of like we said, Parkinson's doesn't have me, I have it. And then what are you going to do with it, right? So, you know, the events that occur in time, they can stand out and define you if you let them. However, again, in this process, we're encouraging people to say that you want to shape your stories. You want to take control of those narratives and not let the external forces define you, all right? So you don't have to have it define you. I mentioned Joseph Campbell and that work that he's done to bring people together in the monomyth. He studied myths from around the world from the beginning of time, from cave paintings to modern times, and he found that there is similarities, great similarities between how we relate to each other. So that's how we're applying that to storytelling and doing that in conjunction with my PhD program. So all of this adds up to helping the community tell their story better. Now, in brief, this diagram takes a look at what the hero's journey is. And I'm just going to touch on the first two because that's where we are in our class right now. And that's the ordinary world and the call to adventure. So the ordinary world is the moment before the Parkinson's diagnosis. This is basically where life was just normal and you're going along just fine. I have assigned as homework, and yesterday's homework, everyone to rewatch Star Wars. I think most people have seen it, or for those who are watching it for the first time, they get to see Luke's heroic journey because it's a classic one, and that helps them see, okay, what was his ordinary world? What was my ordinary world? What is this concept? You go from your ordinary world to cruising along suddenly, bam, sharp hit with the diagnosis, and that is the call to adventure. The call to adventure is the diagnosis with Parkinson's. Now, I know that might seem like a strange term, but that's what we're asking you to do here, is take a heroic stance on Parkinson's. I'm going to step into this thing, and I'm going to take it as an adventure, a journey that I can go forward with. So in the call to adventure itself, it's often those stories that all of you talked about telling. The difficulty, the pain, the fear, the trauma, the way the doctor's office looked, smelled, the manner of the doctor, the first person you told or the people you didn't tell out of shame or fear. All of those things go into that. And then the stories begin to unfold. And what's going to happen here at the end of this is a 6-month journey I'm on with these participants. We're meeting once a week, and they are going to be able to tell a story and have some kind of story, or a piece of a story, I should say, to tell, a representable form. At the end of that 6 months, it said, here's my hero's journey, that serves as a beacon of light for everyone in the Parkinson's community to say, this is the power of a heroic story and taking control of the narrative. So we're wrapping up here. I'll just go to where we are with Boys of Summer now, because we're in the third phase for ourselves. We premiered the third film over the summer. We mentioned the first film in 2004, the second in 2014. We did the third film here in 2020. And there's me with my grown-up son and my dad. We were at a ball game down in San Diego. And we found there's just been tremendous feedback. People have seen this story as a stepping forward because it's stepping into the community. This isn't about me and my dad's journey alone. This is about how our journey can affect positively in the storytelling way others and highlight other people's stories and what they're doing. And that's really where we're at. We have now gotten AARP involved. They're going to be screening the film here in Southern Nevada in about 2 weeks, and they're looking forward to possibly coming to more markets to screen the film. We have also gotten several Major League Baseball teams' interest. The Oakland A's, the Dodgers, the Reds, and the Padres have all talked about partnering with AARP to put on screenings in those local markets, and we're going to hopefully move that forward. And also working with a company called Nova Joy. They took a piece of my dad's story where he was struggling to work with his assisted mobility device, because that's a step into some people have with Parkinson's. And the woman who runs the company was so moved by my dad's story and his struggle and his ultimate acquiescence to say, I'm going to end up using this thing and I'm going to use it well to empower my life, that now it's a commercial for NovaJoy. It tells the story of how to step into that part of your life, again, heroically, with strength, and not with fear, and not with, you know, this is the end. No, it's a new beginning. And so those are ways that storytelling have impacted the community already, and we feel are going to do even more as we continue forward. So as I mentioned with Boys of Summer, Third Base, we are working on the 4th film in the series. There will be a 5th to kind of match the Honing Yar scale. We're going to go through the 5 stages is what we're planning. Continuing the PhD program, I'm nearing the halfway point. There will be more studies coming up. If you're interested in taking part of those, please contact me, and we'll get you that contact information here at the end, because whether it's something through the improv program, the day 1 program is already full for now, but this won't be the last time we run it. So if you're interested in being involved with that, let us know too. And then the growth of, I mentioned the improv I2IPD, there's a website you can check out. And I'll also post and blog information updating about the Day 1 PD Superheroes program if you're wondering how the narrative of that program works. So those are all the ways this wraps up together to remind all of us that we're better together, and all of us can lift each other up by being courageous and strong and using our powerful voices to tell our stories. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robert. That was really great. So much great information there. And again, lots of ways to engage with the community and tell your story. So I do want to allow a few minutes for questions. We did have a few questions come in. And then I'm also going to invite anyone who would like to share their superhero name or you know, a few things about themselves to raise their hand in a minute here and do so. My first question is actually for Kristy. So Kristy, do you look for caregiver stories as well as stories from people with Parkinson's?
Yes, of course. November is actually National Caregivers Month. So as part of that, some of our calls to action on Facebook are for people to submit their stories, especially if they're care partners, in addition to sharing their own tips. So we love our care partners and we always want to hear their stories.
That's great. And then Kristy, also, how do I involve my family in helping me tell my PD story? Because I know that can be tricky. Everybody sort of has a different perspective. What are your suggestions?
Sure. If anyone in the family wants to write their own My PD story from their perspective, we always welcome that. We love getting family photos to include as part of My PD stories. You know, a lot of people like Daniel Sorenson say that Parkinson's disease is a family disease because you deal with it together and it affects everyone in the family a little bit differently. So we really encourage any way you'd like to share it. And like I said, with video, if you have a child, a grandchild, a cousin, a nephew who wants to help you record your My PD story, they can definitely do it and also be a part of it. They can be in your story. So we're happy to work with you.
That's great. Thank you. So Robert, if somebody has speech challenges and they feel uncomfortable, what do you usually recommend for people to sort of get over that feeling of discomfort and maybe go ahead and find a way to participate?
There's a number of great speech programs, and my dad recently has taken that on. One of the things he noticed in the films was he was sorry to see how much I had to subtitle him in order to be heard. And he was embarrassed by that. And so he has gotten involved with the Parkinson'S Voice Project, and I know Lee Silverman program is another one as well. So there are many chapters of these things and lots of online videos that do that as well. So you can do them privately if you wish. But I encourage you, it's like anything else. It's an exercise, your voice is. And so you want to go ahead and use it. And the neat thing is, once you learn how to use it, then you might discover there's some fun ways to use it in ways you hadn't thought of before. Singing, even for those who are bold enough to do something like beatboxing. It's very interesting and might sound really ridiculous, but it's some way to use your voice and exercise those muscles because your voice is so important.
That's great. That's actually a really great message to end with here. Before we do though, I want to ask, does anybody want to tell us their superhero name? Danielle, do you see anybody raising their hand? I see Samantha. Does anybody want to share their story? Danielle, if you could unmute Samantha. Any luck there? Anyone else? Oh, there she is.
All right, mine is youngin. I was diagnosed at 21. I'm now 30. So I've always been the youngest in the group.
Samantha, we met at the policy forum
yeah.
last year in DC. I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad you're here today. You have such a powerful story. I hope you consider sharing it with us, sending it over to Kristy.
I definitely will.
Wonderful. The youngin. Okay, who else? Who else wants to share their superhero name? That's okay. You know what? Think about it, jot it down, write to Kristy, reach out to Robert. I know some people are asking how to see these films. Robert, I don't know if you're comfortable sharing like a general email or way for people to stay in touch with you, maybe a Facebook page, something like that in chat. That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up because we're at time. I know, I wish we had more time. Kristy and Robert, we can't thank you enough for being here today and sharing all of this great information. Again, congrats to Parkinson's Superheroes for the community grant. And of course, thanks to everybody who's here today. If you had a question that wasn't answered, definitely reach out to us. You can call our helpline at 1-800-4PD-INFO, or you could email our helpline@parkinson.org. The Parkinson's Foundation hosts these virtual events Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So you can join us anytime you want by visiting parkinson.org/pdhealth. That's where you register, just like today. And you'll probably want to join us for our next Wellness Wednesday. That is Shakespeare for Parkinson's. That should be really fun. So it's going to teach us how to warm up the voice and body using the works of Shakespeare. Again, that's at parkinson.org/pdhealth. So just as a quick reminder, today's session has been recorded and will be archived on that same site, parkinson.org/pdhealth. And we welcome you to wave goodbye to everybody, and we hope to see you in the weeks to come. Stay well.